I hope you're all paying attention because we've laid this out as soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. So we have Miah Persson, we have Clara Osowski, we have our music director, Dame Jane Glover, who needs no introduction. We have our tenor and evangelist, Tom Cooley, and we have our baritone, Neal Davies. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Yes. So this conversation is going to be in 2 rounds. The first round is going to be talking about musical journeys. All of our colleagues here on the stage have had unique journeys in life. And we want to hear from each of you in terms of, within about 5 minutes, if you can, your entire life story. What inspired you? What was in your life as a child, as a young person growing up? And how did that journey evolve into bringing you to all of your amazing positions today on the world stage, whether it's opera, concert hall, singing Bach or Mozart or Richard Strauss? We'd love to hear a little bit from each of you on that. But I'm going to, and by the way, we've chosen a few little clips, so each of you get a 3-minute clip tonight. So we're going to hear, we're about music, okay? So we want to listen to some music and hear all of our artists tonight before you hear them live on stage on Sunday and Monday. But please let me start with our music director, Dame Jane Glover, who had amazing news very recently as she became the principal guest conductor of the Fourth Worth Symphony Orchestra. And Jane, we are so delighted. We know Chicago is your home, and we know you belong to music of the Baroque. But tell us what it means when you get this position and what it means to you, please.
Well, I haven't started yet. I start next year. It's starting in 2025. But I couldn't be more thrilled at my time of life to get this wonderful attachment to a symphony orchestra. Yes, Chicago is very much my musical home, and music of the Baroque is my musical family. But I do guest with a number of symphony orchestras as well. But to have an attachment to a symphony orchestra is just thrilling, actually, and it's a very fine orchestra, as I'm sure you know. You probably know them from the Van Cliven competition, which they play, which of course goes all over the world. And I was with them last week, as it happens. I jumped in for a sick conductor, and so, which is why they announced last week, because they thought, well, if she's here, we'll spill the beans. I think they're lovely, and we sat down to some fabulous planning meetings, and so in addition to doing my Bach and Handel and Mozart here, I will be doing Mahler and Shostakovich and stuff.
So you have the full gamut. Today we also announced our new season. What makes you excited, and is there anything that feels different about our new season? Or I'd love to hear your observations on the new season.
Well, I don't know if our wonderful patrons have had a chance to look at what's coming up next season. I mean, it is a fabulously rich season. We're doing not just, we generally do 2 brilliant choral masterpieces like the St. John Passion we're doing this week. We're actually doing 3 next year, where we start with the Creation and we do the Christmas Oratorio of Bach to complete our Bach cycle of big works. But then, because somebody in our midst has a very special, astonishing birthday, we are doing a Handel oratorio as well. Nicholas Kramer, whose birthday it is today, by the way. Well, today he's 79, so next year, amazingly, he's going to be 80. And I refuse to believe the arithmetic. I simply refuse it. Because, as you all know, he's got more energy than the rest of us put together. But this was his request, and that's our birthday present, really, to Nicholas, to do a 3rd big choral masterpiece, plus lots of other concerts with all our wonderful people taking centre stage as well. So.
Well, I hope everybody will enjoy reading about the new season. It's in the press today. When you come to the concerts on Sunday and Monday, you'll get your own brochure. You can read all about it, and we're really looking forward to it. So, we have some familiar friends on the stage, and we have some new friends. So Miah Persson is going to be joining us for the first time this weekend. We are so delighted to have you, Miah. because we've tried multiple times, but you are so busy in so many opera houses, we finally managed to get you here. I wonder, would you share with us just a little bit about your musical journey in life? We know that you're a fantastic Bach singer, as all of our artists are on the stage, and also Mozart and Richard Strauss and modern works as well. But bring us back to Sweden and growing up, and how did it come about for you that you would make your livelihood in this world?
Just say good evening, and I'm very excited to be here. Well, I grew up in a quite non-musical family. I mean, I was more sporty, played all the ball sports under the sun. But I always had teachers who heard something, so they always put me up for the solos in the school choirs when we had like Christmas shows and things. And I had this amazing teacher who always, every year, he wanted to get clothes from the Stockholm Opera, costumes, and then he taught us some opera arias. And we had to, we performed in that. And that's, I think, where it all started. I was in a theatre group that every year, we saved up all the money that we earned doing all our productions and things, and we went to different places. And one year, we went to Copenhagen, and we saw Carmen. I was 13 years old, and I was just like, oh, I'm going to hate this opera. And when it started, I was it was amazing. And since then, that was the seed that started something, but it took me many years, university studies, completely different things, until I had another teacher who actually said, she got me into this competition. And she just said, please, Miah, just go and sing. And I won the competition. And then she said, Miah, you can become a lawyer, because I studied law then. You can become a lawyer whenever you like later on, but a singer, you have to now. So that's when I gave it a go, and here I am.
You have many lawyers here.
Oh, okay.
Nowadays, you live in the UK. I think you have for some time, and
yes.
You've brought your family up there. So,
yes.
What about Sweden now, and London? You still regard yourself as a Swede, and
yes,
you've performed at the Proms, you've performed in Glyndebourne. It's a good European base, London. But do you miss your roots in Sweden?
I am very Swedish, and I will always be very Swedish. So yes, I do. But I have a little house on the sea where I grew up, so we go there every summer, and then, of course, a couple of times, a year. So I do get I get to see my parents and everything, so that's good.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to talk about Bach in a little bit, but first, let's hear our first piece of music tonight. We chose this in the office. This is one of the Bach cantatas, number 92. It's a beautiful soprano aria. John Eliot Gardiner, the English Baroque soloists. I think we have it ready to go over there. And we hope that you enjoy listening to Miah's voice as a recording, and obviously live this weekend. Here we go. Beautiful. Thank you, Miah. I know this is a little bit of a surreal experience for all our singers tonight to be put under the microscope in this way. It's like a communal experience of listening to the radio together. But that got the Eurovision vote in our office for what we should play tonight. And we had so much to choose from. But I want to come back to you shortly, and indeed everybody, to talk further about Bach and the art of singing Bach. But next up is Neal Davies, our fabulous baritone, who's back with us again here in Chicago. Neal, welcome back. You were with us for Jefta not too long ago.
No, that's right. And, very nice to be here. Thank you.
We're going to hear and see some of your Jefta very shortly. But I know you've worked a lot with Jane.
Yes.
Again, you're such a busy man all over the world. But I wanted to ask you how significant it was in 1991 when you won the Leader Prize at the Cardiff Singer of the World. How important is it to win a major international thing earlier in your career? Did it really help you?
Yes, it did. And it is a question I'm asked quite a lot, because I've gone back to Cardiff as an adjudicator, actually 30 years to the day after I'd won the competition. I went back and was on the jury, and I've also done sort of some BBC commentary for the last competition. And you always ask the same thing, you know, did it sort of change your life? And of course you have to be very positive in these sort of situations, but honestly speaking, the Cardiff competition is something that's always mentioned, but for me the more important thing that I did was a competition I did in 1989 whilst I was still a student, and it was an award that doesn't exist anymore, and it was the Peter Pears Award. And it was something that it was the first year it had happened, and BP sponsored it. Probably wouldn't get away with doing that these days. But it was an amazing competition, because they were very specific about what you had to sing. You had to sing an 18th century aria. It was very much in honor of Peter Pears. So you had to sing a Baroque aria, you had to sing a German lied, a French song, and a modern composition that was written for the competition in 4 different keys, so that you were sent the score 4 weeks before the competition. So you had to be a good musician to learn it and memorize it. The finals were held at Sadler's Wells with an orchestra. It's the first time I'd ever sung with an orchestra. And I won this competition, and on the jury that night was Dame Gwyneth Jones, the great Wagner soprano, and she sort of scooped me up and took me under her wing and sort of said, come to Zurich, come and study at the Opera Studio in Zurich. And that, for me, was a much more important competition than Cardiff. Yeah. But it's not a competition that exists anymore, and so nobody ever mentions it. But actually, for me, that was a pivotal turning point in my career, because I thought, well, if somebody of that stature is taking an interest in me, then maybe I have got a chance to do something in this career. So I had done that by the time I did Cardiff, and of course it was a great thing to do. But I always feel it's a slightly sort of false boast to say, oh yes, it transformed my life, because it didn't really. But
wonderful. Well, let's go back in time. When did you know that you had a voice, and when did you know that your life was going to take this direction? Was there music in your family, at your school, in your church, or where did it come from?
Not in my family. I mean, my parents were terrifically supportive, and actually my father had a very fine voice but never did anything with it. But it was school. I think, like most people who end up doing something interesting in life, it's inevitably one person, usually a school teacher, who says, because what do you know at that age? You know nothing. You know nothing about the world when you're 14, 15. And if somebody in authority and somebody you respect and you like says, actually, I think you might have a voice. So I started having singing lessons when I was 16, and I went to university then and read an academic music degree for 3 years at King's London, and then went to the Royal Academy. I was lucky I had the same teacher through the whole period. So I had, for the first six years, from 18 to 24, I had the same teacher, which I think was a really important thing to have that continuity. And then whilst I was at the academy, I won this competition, and that sort of made me feel, okay, I'm going to do it. So still doing it.
And it's been going swimmingly ever since.
It is. Well, actually, going back to the Cardiff thing, last year I was there doing commentary for the final with Jamie Barton, which was great fun, as you can imagine. And they said on the television, they said, oh, we're going to play a clip now of when both of you won your prizes. And whilst they were doing the cutaway, Petroc Trelawney from the BBC sort of turned to me, gave me a wink and said, I think your clip might be in black and white. It was in colour, but I mean, it's...
Wonderful. Well, the clip that we've chosen for you, Neal, is from Handel's Jefta. And, you know, I've been with music of the Baroque for 7 years, and you know, every concert is memorable, but Jefta was particularly memorable. You know, Jane, there was a chemistry of things coming together in a way that sometimes can't be planned. It just worked so well.
I think we cast it very well. 2 of them are here now.
Well, that's true.
We rehearsed it. I mean, because it's such a dramatic piece, we rehearsed it like rehearsing an opera, really. And except we rehearsed it very thoroughly. We spent a whole day on the recitatives, I seem to remember, and that pays off in a big way. And so they really were. We were bonding as a team, and we weren't just coming in singing and going away again.
Absolutely. So this clip is from Act 2. Zabel, who's Jefta's brother, is congratulating his brother on victory in war. It's freedom now once more possessing. So let us hear that clip with Neal Davies.
Freedom now once more possessing, we shall spread with every blessing. More possessing, he shall spread with every blessing. Triumphant joy around, and he shall spread with every blessing. Triumphant joy around, triumphant joy around. Triumphant joy around, triumphant joy, triumphant joy, triumphant joy. Triumphant joy around, triumphant joy around, triumphant joy around. Silent now, no more complaining, shall in blissful plenty reign, like glorious praise we sound, like glorious praise we sound, no more complaining, shall in blissful plenty reign, like glorious praise we sound. Once more possessing, he shall spread with every blessing. Triumphant joy around, and he shall spread with every blessing. Triumphant joy around, triumphant joy around. Triumphant joy around. around triumphant joy around.
Thank you, Neal. Beautiful. I mean, I know it's recorded, but I'm still saying thank you, even though it's not live. You did it. Yeah. Next, we have Clara Osowski, our mezzo-soprano. Clara, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
My wife and Angela, we've clocked up 27 of the American states so far, and I was intrigued earlier to see that you studied in North Dakota, which is a state that we haven't been to.
Oh, you must
and
get there.
And people say, don't bother.
No,
but we really want to go because they say don't bother with North Dakota.
I will be your tour guide.
So what's the North Dakota connection?
North Dakota is where I was born and raised. I grew up on a farm right smack dab in the middle of that rectangle. We raised 50 head of registered Red Angus beef cattle. And my mother was an elementary music teacher. She actually taught K through 12 before my brother and I were born in Riverdale. So she had about 10 to 15 students per grade, and that's about the school that I went to, is about that few of students. But she was a great saxophonist, and she was, instead of going to the Paris Conservatory to study on her Selmer, she decided to get married and raise a family. So she was very musical, and we grew up with, unfortunately, Kenny G in the household, and occasionally Grover Washington. But there was a lot of, my first introduction to Bach was at church in my Trinity Lutheran Church of Turtle Lake, North Dakota. So I didn't travel too far for undergrad. I then moved on to Fargo, which was 2 hours east, maybe about 3 hours east, to the big city, and that's where I did my undergrad at North Dakota State.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit of the high points then in terms of going beyond Fargo to other parts of America and indeed Europe.
Yes, sure.
A whistle stop of some of the high points.
Sure. So I went even further in my graduate school, and I went to Iowa. So I made it to the University of Iowa, and then directly after that, I moved up to Minneapolis, and I call Minneapolis my home now. It's the community is wonderful for music. I started a nonprofit in Minnesota. It's just a great community to make a mistake in. So starting out, I don't have a doctorate, but I feel like I got my doctorate within the community. But while I was in Minnesota, I was doing the audition circuit. I auditioned for young artist programs, as the trajectory is so often, and I got so many no's, I just started to change my trajectory and go where people said yes, and that was in a lot of choral ensembles and choral organizations, because Minneapolis is the land of 10,000 lakes and 10,000 choirs. So I found myself at a point in my very first real job as a singer after grad school. Do I go sing in the opera chorus, or do I go sing in Philip Brunel's Vocal Essence? And I needed a steady schedule so I could also teach, so I chose Vocal Essence, sang with them for 5 years, and then my career just kind of took off. I participated in some of these competitions that you really have to be crazy to sit down and memorize 20 Schubert Lieder and 10 Schumann Lieder, and then just go over buy a plane ticket to Europe, and then let them choose what I'm going to sing. But I was crazy. And while the basses were in the back row rehearsing a section, I was memorizing the fourth stanza of Die Sterne by Schubert. And it's just something I love to do, art song, and I'm so glad it's led me more into the concert world to do a lot of Bach.
And the not-for-profit that you mentioned is the Soar Song Festival, which is all about the celebration of art song, and quite a big deal in America, right? Yeah,
and especially in Minnesota for some reason. We have Dominic Argento and Libby Larson. They grew up also in Minneapolis, 60s, 70s, and the work that we have, the culture that we have of artists, of poets. Libby Larson was just inducted into the Academy of Arts and Letters, And it's just really a great place, like I said, to make mistakes. We try out new musicals all the time, and the Midwest is just, as you know, very nice and very kind. And what we say, we won't say anything until we get into the car. So, so that's just, it's a great place to be.
Sounds a bit like Ireland.
Sure.
Okay, well, the clip that we've chosen is Storge, the fantastic portrayal of Jefta's wife in Jefta. This is very dramatic, folks. This is when Jefta returns from the war and tells his wife that the vow I made was that I would sacrifice or kill the first person I meet when I return, and the first person he meets happens to be his daughter. So this is the reaction of a mother on hearing that news.
First perish thou, and perish all the world. Earth, heaven, and bless us with this only pledge of all our love, this one dear child. For thee to be a murderer, no cruel man. Let other creatures die. Let other creatures die. O heaven, seas and sky, O heaven, earth, seas and sky, in one confusion lie. In one confusion lie. In one confusion lie. O heaven, seas and sky, in one confusion lie.
High drama. Wonderful, wonderful, Clara. Finally, we come to a very familiar artist who has been with us so many times. Before I came to Music of the Baroque, he was artist in residence 2015 to 2016, the tenor, and evangelist supreme Tom Cooley. Tom, great to see you back with us.
So nice to be back. Thank you.
So you have made such a great journey in life with singing the evangelist roles in Bach's Two Passions. I don't know if the St. Marcus, which we talked about today, that's a new discovery from Jane.
But the evangelist is spoken.
Aha. Okay. So, do you also speak parts?
Gladly.
But again, take us back, Tom, with the start of your musical journey and how you got into this in the first place. So.
Sure. I also grew up in Minneapolis, just outside of Minneapolis in Maple Grove, Minnesota, and also come from non-musical people who really didn't understand music, but I sat down at a piano at a very early age and started picking out tunes that I'd heard, and my grandmother said, you need to get that child some piano lessons. So I started through the piano, and then in elementary school started singing in choir, and also was sort of picked out for the solos because I was musical and sensitive as a child and all of those things. And then it was in junior high, I think I had the first teacher who sort of said, you have a special talent. And we went to see a concert. He took us to a concert of the King Singers at Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis. And after the concert, I said, I would just love to do something like that one day. And he said, you're going to do a lot more than that. And that was a really, I wasn't from people who even knew that you could do music as a job. So actually, I think telling my parents that I wanted to be a voice performance major was one of the hardest things that I ever told my parents, and I've told my parents many things, so it was, yeah, that was a moment. But
you got the typical, well, why don't you just get a sensible job? You can always fall back on the music.
Exactly. They really wanted me to get a teaching degree, but I just said, no, I'm going to just do this, and I can get the teaching degree later if I want to. So that was my plan, and I'm still doing it. So, and that all then led me into the world of concert singing, and yeah, I started also singing in the opera chorus and the symphony chorus and those things in the Twin Cities. And there was a little Baroque opera company there, and so I cut my teeth doing my first Handel and Cavalli in Minneapolis. But I also had a great church job, and twice a year we would do Bach cantatas or a large work, and so I did my first Christmas oratorio there, and I figured it out today. It's 31 years ago I did my first St. John Passion and sang the arias of that.
Wow, amazing. But that's incredible. So it actually all started in Minnesota, but then you ended up living in Germany.
Exactly.
And tell us about how important it was for you to actually live there and soak it all in at first hand.
I mean, it was an incredible experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And again, it was Bach that actually brought me there, because Kathy Romy, who was the conductor of the Minnesota Chorale, brought me to the Oregon Bach Festival, where I encountered the great Bach conductor Helmut Rilling, who founded the Oregon Bach Festival and ran it for many years. And I also met there my husband, who was one of Helmut Rilling's, he was the tenor soloist there, and I was in the choir, but also doing some small solos with Helmut. And so it was because I met Jimmy there that I wound up moving to Munich, continuing my studies at the conservatory in Munich, and then things started to happen there, but it really wasn't until I actually did the Staines Institute at the Ravinia Festival one summer, and I got to do a master class for the great Peter Schreier, who's one of the absolute great evangelists of all time. And I remember it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and I think I got up at 5 in the morning because I was going to sing Frohe Hirten for him at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I did, and he loved it. And he loved it so much that he hired me to come a year and a half later to sing the arias of the Christmas oratorio with him singing and evangelizing and conducting, and I sang Frohe Hirten with the Chicago Symphony here. So Chicago and Bach and Baroque music has just been a thing through my whole life.
Fantastic. Well, we have chosen for your musical clip, I guess you could say it's a sneak preview to the weekend, but from last time you were with us in 2018, your closing evangelist moment when you so beautifully talk about how Jesus is laid to rest, and then we have this amazing final, penultimate chorus because there's a chorale that follows, but this was our choice in the office for how we would share a musical moment of Tom Cooley.
Josef von Arimathea, der ein Jünger Jesu war, doch heimlich aus Furcht vor den Jüden, dass möchte abnehmen den Leichnam Jesu. Und Pilatus erlaubte es, derowegen kam und nahm den Leichnam Jesu herab. Es Es kam aber auch Nikodemus, der vormals bei der Nacht zu Jesu kommen war, und brachte Myrrhen und Aloen untereinander bei 100 Pfunden. Da nahmen sie den Leichnam Jesu und bunden ihn in kleinen Tücher mit Spezereien, wie die Juden pflegen zu begraben. Es war aber an der Stätte, da gekreuziget ward, ein Garten, und im Garten ein Neugrab, in welches niemand je gelieget war. Da selbst hinlegten sie Jesum, des Rüsttags willen der Jüden, dieweil das Grab
We beautiful, Tom. We felt we needed to hear at least a little of our chorus tonight, so we interrupted it, but nevertheless, that was just a small little snippet from that penultimate chorus. So in the last 15 minutes, I would love to chat to our soloists about Bach, singing Bach. You know, what do you need to sing Bach? And what makes Bach so special? And why is singing Bach different to singing Handel? You know, these two giants of the Baroque period who were born in the same year, two Germans, different lives, never met. And I'm going to start with Jane, because Jane, I'd like to know from you, what is the difference between conducting Bach
I don't have
and
to
Handel?
sing Bach. Oh, Bach is different at every possible level. I mean, as you know, I adore Handel, and we do a lot of him. But whenever one does Bach, you just feel you have to smarten up even more. I mean, he is so demanding and so perfect, not just musically and emotionally and spiritually, and we get all of that in these passions, but also intellectually. And I just feel he was not just one of the greatest composers of the 18th century, if not ever, but actually one of the greatest intellectuals of the 18th century. And just the way he organizes his music, you can't just sort of play bar by bar by bar. You just have to be aware of sentences and paragraphs and chapters, and one has to have structurally this huge. I mean, I don't know whether the singers would agree with this, whether this is something that you have to be aware of as well. But as a conductor, when one is putting these pieces together, the paragraphs are long and the ideas are amazingly profound, and of course the music is unbelievable. Whether it's the biggest thing in the world or whether it's you know, a viola da gamba and a continuo thing. He can, sometimes I think, you know, the slow movement of Brandenburg 6 is the greatest piece of music ever written, you know, because, and which is just a handful of instruments. He can just knock you sideways with the big stuff and the small stuff, and he never stops demanding that you exceed your reach, so we keep reaching.
And so incredible that he turned out such works of such magnificence in relatively short spaces of time, intended for church services. I was just reading earlier today that after the first part of the St. John, you would have the sermon, and then you have parts 2 and 3. So it all revolved around the church experience, and yet we now know these works today as the ultimate achievements in some of the greatest artistic achievements.
Yes, and what of course is lovely about that is that when we start part 2, the first chorale is sort of effectively the story so far. You know? And then we get on with the narrative.
Exactly. Well, Miah, maybe I can come to you next, because you've sung a lot of Bach. Like all our singers here, they've sung so much of so many composers. But what makes them special for you?
I mean, I agree completely. I mean, the sheer beauty of and complexity, but on the other hand, it's so pure and so clean. It's in a way, when I approach, I need to find the right key to unlock the music, the way of approaching it, because it is different. You can't just let go. You can't just like, wow, sing, because then you miss the little detail here or a little thing. So you really have to stay super focused, even when you're learning it, even when you're like just at home practicing. You really just have to be, to make it justice.
Absolutely. And, you know, I was talking about Handel. Clara, we heard you singing Handel. You know, when you sing Handel and then you sing Bach, are they completely worlds apart?
A little bit. I think for me with Bach especially, there's so many. You're pitting opposites against each other at any moment. So you have to be so secure in what you're trying to get across, and then be able to flip on a dime and do it again a different way. And contextually, you know, people are supposed to be getting this amazing spiritual moment when they're sitting still in a pew. So it's a thing for the performer, I think, with Bach, to keep the solemnity, but also find the thing that stirs the listener all the way in the back of the church. So with Handel, it's a little bit more. It can be very inward as well, but it's more out. We're performing outwards. Where Bach, you have to do that as well, intellectually, spiritually, but it's a major. It's tough to switch on a dime, but that's what makes it most effective, I think.
Neal, what about you? Your observations on Bach in particular?
It's incredibly difficult to learn a new Bach cantata and a new Bach aria, and even after 35 years, I sit down at the piano and think, oh, new Bach cantata coming up, better have a look at that. And you have to go back absolutely to basics, and you have to learn the architecture of the piece, the structure of the piece. Nothing is, yes, of course, patterns are repeated, but they're usually repeated with a slight difference, embellishment, and it can trip you up at any moment. So you have to be incredibly secure in just learning these patterns, and it's the same whether you're singing a solo aria or I mean, I've done the Matthew, the John, the Magnificat, and the B minor solo voice. So all the choruses as well as all the chorales and the arias and Christusing and everything else, Pilatusing, everything. And learning the choruses, actually, they're more difficult to learn than the solo arias, because of course, I know all my colleagues will agree, there's nowhere ever to breathe in a Bach aria. But if you think the arias are difficult, you sing the choruses. There is absolutely nowhere to breathe in these choruses, and the music goes past so quickly. You think of those great turba choruses in the Matthew Passion and in the John Passion, and something like the Gloria or something in the B minor Mass. There is nowhere to breathe, so you can't actually read the music. You just have to memorize it, and you have to memorize the patterns and the shapes, so that when you look at a bar, you know, oh, that's where it goes like that, and then 2 bars later, it goes like that. So you can't, there's a sort of a bear trap every 3 bars in Bach. You really have to, I mean, I don't know how these people sight read it week on week in Leipzig. You know, you just, I don't know, they must have been phenomenal. I know Bach grumbled about his singers and musicians all the time, but they must have been phenomenal, because they were there at sort of 5 o'clock in the morning with a candle sight reading this stuff in a freezing cold church in the winter. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they did it.
It's a very good point.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah. Tom, the Chicago Tribune, in one of your previous performances, said, so intensely did he penetrate the long and demanding narration that the familiar saga took on the urgency of an on-site reportage. Now you, talking about not having enough space to breathe, you have so much information, so much storytelling to convey. How do you even begin to approach it?
I mean, for me with Bach, I always start with the text, because that's where all of, I mean, in the vocal music, obviously, that's where it all comes from. And so you'll say, well, why is he doing this weird, all of a sudden there's this coloratura thing, or why is this on a high note? I still have some questions for him if I ever get a time machine. But I always go to the text, and I lived in Germany for a decade, so I speak fluent German, and it still is something that I love, being able to tell this story. I love being able to be that person who is bringing the narrative to life. And Bach writes the Evangelist so incredibly, because it's really virtuosic. It's very high, it goes very low. You sort of get to show in the evening almost everything you can do with your voice at some point or another. And there are some people who do the Evangelist. I had a well-known Bach scholar person who told me that I needed to sing the Evangelist as though I was reading the news. Completely neutral, completely uninvolved, just a simple, no emotion whatsoever. And I just can't look at that at the page and look at those arias and hear that music and not think that he intended something other than that. So.
Absolutely. It's intensely human.
Yep.
And, you know, you are speaking with great urgency and humanity for so much of the time. Other times you're getting through the story, you're getting the facts out there. So in that sense, you are a news reporter of what was happening on the ground.
There are moments of news reporting, for sure.
Well, we've got 5 more minutes. I want to take some questions from the audience. Thank you, everybody, by the way. Yes, please. We're going to do a quick whistle stop, left to right. I want to know what the next thing is for all of our artists here tonight. What you're looking forward to in terms of your next gig, whether it's the next one after Chicago or another one coming up this year that you're really looking forward to. Miah, you kick us off.
I start. Okay. What should I pick? I'm going to sing 4 last songs by Strauss in New York in November with the New York Film. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. It's, what's his name again now then? It's the Finnish young Santo Maria, and his last name, yes, that one, exactly. He is, we did that together in London a couple of years ago, and now we're doing it again.
Was that at the proms?
No, it wasn't.
Okay, I know you've sung at the proms as well.
Yeah.
Okay, fabulous.
Yeah, so that's something that I'm looking very.
Oh yeah, very different to Bach.
It is. It is.
Wonderful. Then Clara, what's next up for you?
One thing I'm very excited about is the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra has invited me for my debut. So I'll be singing Il Tramonto by Respighi and some Schubert songs that were arranged by Max Reger. So, and König is one of them. So it's my first, because no pianist ever wants to play it. So I said, okay, well, I'll find an orchestra then. So that's in April.
Excellent, very exciting. Jane, you're next.
Oh,
you don't have to be a singer. You can answer as well. That's for conductors too.
My next gig is Don Giovanni, in fact, in Houston. And after that, I also will be with the New York Philharmonic, and I'm very much looking forward to that in May. But of course, I'm really looking forward to the MOB season starting.
Of course. How could you say anything else? Yeah, kicking off with the creation in September.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Tom?
So, week after next, I'm actually very excited to be performing and recording Bach's Easter Oratorio and the Magnificat together with the conductor Nicholas McGeegan in San Francisco.
Exciting. And Neal?
Well, staying with the Bach theme, I am doing in the summer, it's the opening concert of the Edinburgh International Festival, and it is Mendelssohn's St. Matthew Passion, the Mendelssohn's version of the Bach St. Matthew Passion, because you know Mendelssohn basically dusted off the score and thought, oh, this is quite good, let's give it a go. So that is something. I've just received the score, and I haven't cracked it open yet, but I'll be really interested to see what lies within the pages. So.
Fantastic, very exciting. Jane, you've something else as well.
Oh, no, yes, I can't.
I'm surprised you didn't mention it first.
Okay, but one of the things I am looking forward to this year, on December the 5th, which is Mozart's death day, every year in Salzburg they do his Requiem to commemorate his death, and this year I'm conducting it in Salzburg, and I'm so thrilled.
I would say it's about time too. Okay, folks, we'll take some questions from the audience for 10 minutes or so. Holland is walking with a microphone. In fact, I'm going to give her a microphone. Holland, have my microphone.
Thank you. All right.
So anybody with a question? Lovely. Thank you so much for coming. Come on, we always get a few questions. One down at the very back.
Thank you. This has been delightful. The question I have is, you've chosen to do chorus work and concert work. How does that differ from performing in operas?
Good question. Who'd like to kick off with that one?
The only opera I've ever been a part of is where I met Jane, actually, Albert Herring. I mean, the only really house opera, and that was during the pandemic. I have not chosen that. I think the world has chosen that for me, but I love chamber music and concert music. I do enjoy that I don't have to be in one place for more than a week or two at a time. I don't know how you guys do the multiple weeks in a hotel and things like that. So someone else could speak to that, but I prefer a lot of variety in my life.
Miah, you've done so much opera. I mean, it's the time commitment for a start.
I didn't really get the question. Was it the
difference between concert performance with orchestra and
operas?
Opera.
Well, I mean, of course, the time is one of the major differences, because when you do an opera, you have 6-week rehearsals, and then you do like maybe 1.5 months, 2 months of shows, and but yes, you do stay away a long time from your family and everything, but being on stage in an opera situation where you have, the costume, the colleagues, the music, the acting, it's really, really, really fantastic. I love it. But also, of course, it is really amazing, as you say, you come for a couple of days, you get together, you work really intensely, and you do a couple of really good concerts, and then you go back home again. And then, so I mean, both are equally amazing, and you get so much joy out from it. But it's the time, basically, that is the difference, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, obviously you've got to memorize opera. I'm always fascinated by that. Maybe the long rehearsal period is all about refamiliarizing yourself. How long does the memory muscle come back?
Yeah, I mean, we need to be ready. You know, if you go, it's not like a theater where you can walk around with your manuscript or your score. Absolutely not. You need to be ready and just go.
And how does that muscle memory kick in when you go back to a role that you've played before? How quickly does it come back?
Well, I mean, I'm lucky. I mean, I don't know lucky, but I mean, I memorize quite quickly and remember it quite easily. So, yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it's part of the job, of course. But also, if you've studied it well to start with, then it's just there.
Wonderful. Have we another question, unless the guys have anything to say on that subject? So Lee has a question.
The other night at Symphony Center, there was a small little lecture program about, and basically they were fundraising for their for the production of Mahler's Second. And one of the things that was flashed up on the screen was a picture of the recording jacket for the last time that the CSO recorded Mahler's Second, Bernard Haitink conducting, and Miah Persson.
Oh my
as,
God.
Yeah, and you can go buy that, by the way, at Symphony Center store. But really, this question is, when I think about it, you're going to sing 4 last songs. You've sung Mahler. You sing a lot of Bach, and I would address this to everyone really on the stage. How do you, is it difficult to inhabit those 3 artistic visions? Or, and I'm not going to ask, do you have a favorite, but when you think about that music, all the 3 things that you just mentioned, it's such different music, but it's such wonderful music. Is it difficult to get there?
No, I mean, the thing is, as I said, I think it's about this key to unlock, for me at least, to unlock the patterns, to unlock just the way of thinking and of approaching the music, I think. Because it's all great music, as you say. And the thing, what I find with Bach is that you just have to stay so switched on. It is a different thing, I think. What do you say?
What I was going to add to that was, I think sometimes as singers, particularly as a young singer, and you think, oh gosh, I've got to sing some Mahler now, and then I've got to sing some Bach, and then maybe I've got to sing some, whatever, Beethoven or something like that. If you try to change your voice or change the way you sing in order to accommodate the repertoire you're singing, you're kind of on a hiding to nothing, because, I mean, I'm just a believer that good singing is good singing, and if you're too influenced by thinking, gosh, I now have to sound like a Wagner singer or a Mahler singer or something like that. No, you just approach it with what you have, and of course some things are more successful than others. But I think the idea that it's radically different, it's not really, because over time you get to realize what you're capable of doing and what your strengths are and what your not so great strengths are. So you cut your cloth. But
it's the musicality of it. I mean, you don't do rubatos and you don't do these kind of things in Bach.
No.
It's the style.
It's a stylistic thing rather than actually.
It's more the stylistic.
Changing the way one sings. It's.
Have we any more questions? Okay, I think that is it. I feel like I'm at an auction or something, going, gone. I want to thank you all for being here. It's been such a pleasure having our singers here. It's always fascinating to get this first-hand insight in the world of singers, traveling the world, singing all this amazing repertoire, and also to have Jane here and take a little bit of time away from the stage and reflect on everything that everyone does. So grateful to you for being with us tonight. So grateful to Lee and Jean for hosting us once again here at the beautiful Chicago Club. And we are looking forward immensely to Sunday afternoon in Skokie and Monday at the Harris Theatre. It's a big highlight of our year. Thank you for being with us, and thank you all for your continued support.